As the military cruiser sliced through the vacuum of space towards the distant planet of Desmond-XIV, Ruby Goldsmith stood before a holographic display, her eyes tracing the swirling clouds of the stormy world below. The hum of the ship's engines provided a constant backdrop to her thoughts, which often flickered back to the days when her battles were fought in courtrooms and shadowy back alleys, not against a backdrop of interstellar conflict. Thinking about the old days, Ruby the voice belonged to Lieutenant Marcus Finn, her second in command, who approached with the familiar clank of his combat boots on the metal deck. Ruby turned, managing a small smile. "Always, Marcus. It keeps things in perspective." Marcus nodded, leaning against the console. "From tax raids to frontline assaults. That's quite the career shift." Ruby chuckled dryly. "I used to chase down tax evaders and drug lords. Now, it's rogue robots on distant planets." But it's not just the what that's changed, it's the why. She gestured towards the display, where images of their last skirmish flickered. "This isn't about recovering dues or disrupting illegal trades anymore. It's about survival." The room fell silent for a moment as the weight of her words settled between them. Then, shaking off the gravity, Ruby tapped the display, bringing up the mission details. "Let's get to it. We've got a job to do." The team gathered around, armored figures leaning in to catch every word. Ruby outlined their objective with precision, her pointer gliding over the map displayed in the air. Desmond-XIV isn't just another dot on the star map. It's strategic for the robots, which means it's crucial for us to secure it. She flicked through images of the planet's surface, highlighting their landing zones and potential hotspots for enemy activity. Intel suggests the main robot contingent is holed up here. She tapped a sector of tangled ruins, which is where we'll focus our assault. "But remember," she continued, her gaze sweeping over her team, "our primary mission is to search for survivors. Any human life takes priority." The team nodded, the reality of their task grounding them. "Ruby, how do you keep us on track when everything seems so?" A young sergeant, Jody, hesitated, searching for the right word. "Hopeless." Ruby met her gaze, her expression resolute. "By remembering why we fight, Jody. We're the line between those robots and the future of humanity. We may not be collecting taxes anymore, but we're still enforcing the law. The law of survival." The meeting ended with Ruby reviewing individual assignments and contingencies. As the team dispersed, Marcus lingered behind. "You really believe we'll find survivors out there?" he asked, his voice low. Ruby packed up her tablet and turned to him. "We have to believe, Marcus. The moment we stop hoping, we lose more than just people. We lose what we're fighting for." With a final nod to Marcus, Ruby headed towards the armory. Her armor awaited, a shell not just of alloy and circuits but of the duty she carried. As she suited up, the reflection in the mirror showed a soldier, a leader, but most importantly, a guardian of what remained of humanity. As the cruiser descended towards Desmond-XIV, Ruby's thoughts returned to her past one last time, not with nostalgia but with the clarity of purpose. She was no longer just recovering assets, she was protecting them, the most vital asset of all life. The descent pod shuddered as it breached the atmosphere of Desmond-XIV, the turbulence a mere precursor to the battle that awaited on the surface. Ruby Goldsmith peered out of the small viewport, her gaze hardening at the sight of the charred landscape sprawling beneath them. The planet was a tapestry of destruction, with blackened fields that once fed civilizations and hollowed-out villages that spoke of a hurried evacuation or worse. "Brace for landing," Ruby announced over the comm, her voice steady despite the churn in her stomach. The final descent was always the hardest part, not just the physical jolt, but the mental shift to combat readiness. The pod touched down with a jarring thud, dust swirling around them like specters rising to meet the invaders. As the hatch blew open with a hiss, Ruby was the first to step out, her boots crunching on a mixture of ash and debris. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal and something unsettlingly organic. "Form up," Ruby commanded. Her squad, a unit of 6 including her, fanned out from the pod, their heavy armor clanking softly against the backdrop of a haunting silence that enveloped the landscape. The village in front of them was a ghost town, buildings reduced to skeletons, their interiors exposed and lifeless. Ruby's visor adjusted to the external light, highlighting heat signatures and movement, but all it captured was the stillness of death. "Looks like a graveyard," murmured Sergeant Knox, his voice barely audible over the comm. "Stay sharp," Ruby replied. "Intel might be outdated. We don't know what's waiting for us." They moved through what was once a market square, their sensors sweeping through the rubble. Ruby paused by a scorched toy, a stark reminder of the civilians who once called this place home. Her heart clenched, but she pushed the emotion down, focusing on the mission. As they approached a collapsed structure, Ruby's tactical display suddenly pinged a signal, weak, but definitely not a ghost. "I've got something," she announced, signaling the team to halt. 30 meters ahead, near that downed communications tower. The team advanced with renewed caution, their formation tight and deliberate. Ruby led from the front, her rifle at the ready, eyes scanning for any hint of the signal's source. It wasn't long before they heard it, a faint, mechanical whirring, out of place in the deathly quiet. It was unsettlingly familiar, a sound Ruby had come to associate with one thing: robots. "In contact, likely." "Rules of engagement," Knox asked. "The standard check before a firefight." "Defensive until provoked. We're not here to start a war, just to finish this one," Ruby clarified, her gaze fixed on the shadows ahead. As they rounded a crumbled wall, the source of the signal became visible: a lone robot, its casing battered and one limb grotesquely twisted. Yet it was operational, its sensors flickering weakly as it detected their presence. "Hold fire," Ruby ordered, stepping forward. The robot's design was reconnaissance, not combat. It posed no immediate threat, and Ruby's curiosity piqued. Recon robots often carried valuable intel. "Looks like it's been here a while," observed Private Lai, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Let's see if it's got anything useful," Ruby decided, kneeling beside the robot. She extracted a portable data reader, connecting cables to the robot's exposed ports. The device whirred, a stream of data flowing across Ruby's screen: maps, logs, and more crucially, recent surveillance data. "Got something. This might show us where they're holed up," Ruby said, downloading the data. "Let's—" A sudden sharp crack split the air, a warning shot that pinged off the rubble near them. "Sniper!" Knox yelled. The team instantly scattered, taking cover. Ruby peered through her scope, her eyes narrowing as she spotted the telltale glint of a lens in a distant window. Not a sniper, but another robot, this one clearly not just for recon. "Engage that target," Ruby commanded, the team responding with a hail of fire that silenced the threat efficiently. With the immediate danger neutralized, Ruby gathered her team. "This place isn't dead yet. Let's clean it up and move on." As they resumed their mission, Ruby reflected on the irony of her situation. Once a tax enforcer, now a soldier in an interstellar war. But some things didn't change, whether facing human criminals or rogue robots. The goal was to restore order. The ruins of the village had transformed into a battleground. As Ruby Goldsmith led her team deeper into the heart of the chaos, the remnants of buildings and scattered debris provided little cover from the relentless assault of humanoid robots. Each enemy they encountered was more formidable than the last, their metallic bodies glinting ominously under the harsh light of Desmond-XIV's twin suns. Positions. Now Ruby's voice cut through the din of combat, her years as a tax enforcement officer making her no stranger to high-stakes situations. In her past life, she'd coordinated raids with precision, a skill that now served her well on the battlefield. Knox and Levi took point, crouching behind a crumbling wall. Their rifles were trained on the advancing robots, the rhythmic bursts of gunfire punctuating each of Ruby's commands. Martinez flanked to the left. "Jensen, you're with me." "We need to outmaneuver them," Ruby ordered, assessing the situation with a tactical eye. Her team moved fluidly, a testament to their training and Ruby's leadership. The robots advanced in a disturbingly coordinated fashion, their movements synchronized as if all controlled by a singular, ominous will. Ruby recognized the pattern, similar to the formations used by drug cartels she had dismantled back on Earth. This familiarity gave her a slight edge, an understanding of how to disrupt their approach. "Use the MPs," now Ruby shouted over the team's private channel. Jansen, her tech specialist, nodded and deployed a series of electromagnetic pulses. The devices, small but powerful, were designed to disrupt electronic circuits temporarily. As the nearest robots staggered, their systems overwhelmed by the MPs, Ruby led a charge. "Hit them hard," she yelled, firing her plasma rifle into the faltering line of robots. Her shots found their marks, severing limbs and shattering the synthetic visors that served as the robots' eyes. The team's synergy was palpable. Li provided covering fire, forcing another group of robots into the kill zone where Knox lay in wait. His shots were precise, each bullet meant to disable rather than destroy, conserving ammunition for a prolonged engagement. Despite their initial success, the robots were relentless. A second wave surged forward, seemingly undeterred by the losses they had sustained. Ruby gritted her teeth, feeling the weight of responsibility for her team's safety. "All back. Regroup at Sector 7," Ruby commanded, her mind racing through potential strategies. As they moved, she communicated with her command ship. "We need aerial support at our location. They're pushing us hard." The voice that answered was calm, collected. "Support inbound. Captain Goldsmith. Hold your position." Ruby and her team reached a more defensible position, an old marketplace with multiple entry points that could be easily monitored. They set up a perimeter, Ruby's mind working through her next move. The sound of incoming drones signaled the arrival of their support. Ruby looked up, relief momentarily flashing across her face as the drones laid down suppressive fire, halting the robot's advance. "This isn't over," Ruby said, checking her ammunition. "We've got to clear them out completely. This village could be key to understanding their movements." Her team nodded, their expressions set in grim determination. They prepared for another push, Ruby at the forefront. "We do this together," she reaffirmed, meeting each of her team members' eyes. "We watch each other's backs." The fight resumed, Ruby leading her team into the fray with renewed vigor. Each movement, each command she gave, echoed her past life's experiences, only this time. The stakes were not just drugs or money, but the very future of human colonies across the galaxy. The battle had left the village on Desmond-XIV eerily silent, save for the occasional crackle of dying fires and the distant hum of departing drones. As Ruby Goldsmith surveyed the damage, her helmet off now, she let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of command press down on her shoulders. "All clear," Captain Knox reported, his voice cutting through the stillness. "No survivors." Ruby nodded solemnly, her gaze sweeping over the ruins. "All right, let's secure the area and prepare for extraction." As her team dispersed to carry out her orders, Ruby walked through the deserted streets of the village. The devastation was total, every building bearing scars from the battle. Her boots stirred up ash and dust as she moved, each step a reminder of what had been lost here. "This isn't what I signed up for," Ruby muttered to herself, her voice barely audible. She had joined the military to make a difference, to protect humanity from threats, but the emptiness of this victory gnawed at her. "Captain," it was Lei, her voice hesitant. "Are you all right?" Ruby turned, managing a strained smile for her young subordinate. "Just thinking about the cost of all this. Lei, every victory leaves its mark on us." Lei nodded, understanding more than her years would suggest. "It's hard to see it as a victory with so much destruction." "Yeah," Ruby sighed, "but if we don't fight, who will? This war, it's bigger than any of us. It's about survival." The conversation paused as they reached the center of the village, the site of the heaviest fighting. Ruby's eyes were drawn to a small toy, scorched and half-buried under rubble, a stark contrast to the high-tech weaponry and armor scattered around. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. "We're saving lives, aren't we?" Lei asked, following Ruby's gaze to the toy. Ruby looked up, her expression hardening with resolve. "Yes, we are. And sometimes saving lives means making hard choices. Like today." The extraction craft descended, its engines disrupting the silence, whipping up clouds of dust around them. Ruby tucked the toy into her belt, a reminder of why they fought, why they must continue to fight. "Let's head back," Ruby said, leading the way to the craft. "We've done what we could here." As they boarded the craft, Ruby took one last look at Desmond-XIV. the ruins fading into the background. She settled into her seat, closing her eyes briefly as the craft lifted off. In those quiet moments, Ruby's thoughts drifted to the future, to the next mission and the ongoing war against the robots. Each battle brought them one step closer to ending the threat, yet the path ahead remained fraught with uncertainty. "We'll keep fighting," Ruby whispered to herself, a silent vow that echoed in her heart. For every life, for every future. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to leave us a like and subscribe too. We'll see you in the next video.